let's talk about your focal dystonia now. How did it manifest?
In the very beginning, I had a lessening of speed. I was playing Villalobos 12 etudes, and I noticed that I was playing a little slower, and then it seemed to get a little slower, and there was some hampering in the movement of the fingers. They just weren't responding right, and I had no idea what was going on. Let's see, that was in 1984, and that was in the spring, as I remember. Yes, because then in the summertime, when I had little or no concerts, I started to investigate more closely by hanging my head down and watching every little movement that my finger would make. And that process made the thing much, much worse. So it deteriorated into what I later found out was focal dystonia, which is when the finger was curling into the palm with no pain. The ring finger for me was the most affected finger, and the pinky was also affected, and a little bit affected was the middle finger, just as a kind of a bystander. But it was very clear that the ring finger was the affected finger, and it was curling into my palm, and I could pull it out, and it would be kind of slow, and then I'd play again, and it would pull in again, and it just got worse and worse. And by the beginning of the fall, I had a concert in Portland, Oregon, in which I played the 12 etudes on the second half. First half went okay, not bad, but when I got to the etudes, my hand fell apart, and I could not control the ring finger at all. So on the spot, and I swear this is true, on the spot, I refingered all 12 etudes with my thumb and index finger. and I swear to you that people came up to me afterwards and told me what a terrific concert that was. And I was devastated. I was devastated because I knew this couldn't go on. So I stopped, right, that was my last concert at that point, and then I started to seek help from various people. First person I went to was a chiropractor, and all of these people that I went to, there wasn't a single one who helped me. I don't even remember all of them. I went to one fellow who dealt with biofeedback. I went to a hand specialist, a clinical kinesiologist, an acupuncturist, a myotherapist, Hoshinotherapy, which was an eclectic therapy that involved some Rolfing technique. Rolfing? You don't know what Rolfing is? Oh, Rolfing, there was a person named Rolf. Their last name was Rolf, R-O-L-F. It's very, very deep tissue massage. It can be very painful. And some people swear by it. Leon Fleischer swear by it, actually. He claimed that it cured him. It made me worse. So it got to the point, over this time, my condition, which began with fingers curling into the palm as I played, very quickly deteriorated into fingers curling into the palm when I even began to approach the strings. Just almost thinking about approaching the strings, the finger would curl into the palm. I didn't even have to play. When I was done with the Hoshino therapist, I would hold out my hand for change in the store and would flick the change out of my hand. And, I mean, it was just horrendous. It's just unbelievable. So when it got to that point, I thought, well, I'm barking up the wrong alleys here. Nobody can help me. And somebody that I spoke to who worked at the National Institute of Health told me that, in fact, in the performing arts medicine world, focal dystonia is considered incurable. So I thought, well, why am I trying to go to this world if they all think it's incurable? And every time I would go to somebody, I would trust them completely and do everything they said, and my hopes, they all said, we can help you, and I'd be so excited about it, and then my hopes were dashed to the ground every time. So I thought, this is ridiculous, I'm wasting my time. And then I just stopped, dead in my tracks. I did nothing for a while, just nothing.
Were you still trying to play?
Not really at that point. I just didn't know what to do. I was kind of waiting for something to appear, to fall into my lap.
Did you consider turning the guitar over and playing that way?
At some point, I did. I had heard about the violinist who did that.
Was that to counteract a problem?
Focal Dystonia.
Right.
Yeah. Seemed to help him. It didn't help me. No.
So your hand still curled up when you tried?
Oh, yeah. The next thing I did was I out of frustration of really just wanting to play, I started just playing with thumb and index fingers, and slowly started practicing and refingered a lot of things. So in order to do arpeggios, I would do these crazy combinations of fingerings, and found that I could play pieces that were quite impressively difficult with the PI combination. I was playing the Richard Rodney Bennett Sonata, I was playing the Paganini Grand Sonata. I actually was very successful. It was a concert that had some coverage. It was at Jordan Hall in Boston, which is a very fine concert hall. It was covered by a very difficult Boston Globe critic, Richard Dyer, who loved it and was very impressed. I was playing that way for a while. Meanwhile, a colleague of mine at New England Conservatory, Neil Anderson, who very soon after stopped teaching, strangely enough, he wanted to make real money. But he was interesting because he was in a class that I sat in on. He was showing a student something that he was just beginning to experiment with, which was using larger muscles. I don't even remember if he described it that way. He may not have. But he was asking the student to just swing at the string with gross motions. That student's playing, it got better. The sound was better, it was a little louder. It was a very interesting idea, and the light bulb went on in my head. I thought, this might have something to do with my focal dystonia. So when I went home to New York, right after that, I did this in my practice room. And within 5 minutes of doing this, my ring finger was releasing. And it was an unbelievable moment. My tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't believe it. Obviously, I wasn't cured on the spot. I knew that there was a lot of work to be done, but I also knew that this was the beginning of something. I knew I was using larger muscles, but I didn't know where they were, and it took me actually a couple of years before I figured out that they were involved in the armpit, in a certain spot. And fascinatingly, right after, about a month or two after I made that discovery, I had breakfast with Pepe Romero in New York. His father had focal dystonia, and Pepe helped him cure it. He said, I'll show you where the problem was. And he came over to the other side of the table, put his finger in that spot. I said, I can't believe you're telling me this, because I just discovered this 2 months ago. It took me about a year for the middle finger to stop pulling in. That was the least affected. And then another year for the pinky to stop pulling in. And the ring finger was pulling in less after another year, and I was completely cured after one more year. So after 4 years of this work, 1996, I was 100% cured.